Dems use immigrant babies as metaphorical human shields. Bono misspeaks, the Dunce of the Day segment, and an interview with Charlie Kirk, all coming up next. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Duke, and thank you for joining us again. As always, I am joined by Katie Petrick, the Argyle assassin and host of The Healthy Republic, for today's countdown. Katie, what do you have for us this week?
So in one word, immigration. Everything that we've been seeing on the media, social media, in news media, everything is about immigration and what's happening at the border right now. So we know that President Trump is following the law. And basically, we've had policy that came out from the Bush administration right at the end, and it followed through all the way through President Obama. But over the weekend, it just became noted by everyone in news media and in social media world that we've been following the policy about our immigration, and now they're outraged.
Yeah, there's a lot to say about this, and in fact, there's so many people talking about this, I almost didn't want to do this segment today. But a couple things I'd just like to throw out there as a way of reminding us of things that the mainstream media and liberal progressives and even some idiot rhino Republicans no longer remember. First of all, these are illegal aliens. You can call them anything else you want. You can lecture us about how people aren't illegal. Well, their actions are. These are moms and dads who have risked the lives of their children to drag them across deserts and try to sneak into the United States of America. When we hear these stories about people dropping dead at the border, people going without water and food and starving, they're tragic stories. But these are moms and dads who are subjecting little children to these kinds of forced marches. These kids have no choice. So the fact that the federal government of the United States is taking these kids away from mom and dad when they're arrested on the border is a good thing. Name another situation where a mom and dad use little kids to participate in what is in effect a felony, to get little kids to participate in a felony act, and then once the arrest goes down, the kids stay with the felonious parents. It doesn't happen. The kids are transported somewhere else. We keep hearing about how malnourished these kids are, how starving they are, how many diseases, vaccinations they never got as poor kids in Mexico or Guatemala or Nicaragua. Well, they're getting those things now. So just because they're not palatial digs where these kids are temporarily being held doesn't mean they're better off with their parents. What these immigration activists are trying to do is once you accept that these little kids are entitled to every aspect of citizenship and our compassion, I'll give you that. We should be compassionate to those kids within the law. But when you make the decision that these little kids will be the face of immigration, then by definition, you have to look after the parents who have to be looking after the kids because you can never separate them. And this is the problem with our broken immigration system. This is the problem that the Republicans in the House and the Senate, that for the 8 years of the Obama administration, liberal Democrats never wanted to touch that because all of this illegal immigrant helps big corporations and it helps Democrat politicians. That's why nothing has got done. To blame Donald Trump for this mess is nothing more than rank political opportunism by a group of mosquitoes. That's what the only way I can think of, blood-sucking parasite mosquitoes, the only way to refer to the mainstream medium. They smell blood in the air, right? They think that this is finally, Stormy Daniels didn't stick. Well, I'm sure she sticks to something, but she didn't stick to Trump, right? All the other stuff that they've thrown at him now for 2 years hasn't stuck. This one's getting some traction. You got a weeping MSNBC host, right? You've got weepy, what's her name?
Rachel Maddow.
Yeah, weeping Rachel Maddow now, weeping for the children. 8 years this went on under Obama. Most of the pictures you're seeing today about kids in cages, wrapped in tinfoil, those come from the Obama era, right? And Rachel had no tears to shed then. She sheds them now. That's what we call crocodile tears.
Crocodile tears.
I remember when Rock was young. Me and Susie had so much fun.
Anywho, going back to President Obama in 2014, in his own words, he came out, addressed the public, and said, "We are a nation of immigrants. We're also a nation of laws. Undocumented workers broke our immigration laws, and I believe they must be held accountable, especially those who may be dangerous." Obama then said this to Congress. He said, "Pass a bill," and nothing happened in that time since. But obviously, it's all President Trump's fault because everything is President Trump's fault.
And here's the thing. If it weren't for these little kids, we've even gotten in news today. There's already rumblings that Chuck Schumer has basically informed his caucus that we are not going to sign on to any immigration deal in the Congress or the Senate. We basically want Trump to twist in the wind. These kids' suffering is good for our PR. It's good for our midterm reelection chances. It's good for our Democrat fundraising. So Schumer's already implied that he's not interested in signing some piece of legislation that follows the laws and the Constitution.
Yeah, it's pure politics, and you know it's pure politics when Senator Ted Cruz came out and he said, hey, we have some emergency legislation. Let's change actually the laws. Let's change the laws and we will get the illegal immigrants back with their families. So at least they'll be together, because that's what everyone's griping about. They want to keep families together. Okay. Ted Cruz introduces emergency legislation, and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, as you've already mentioned, quote, says there are so many obstacles to legislation, and when the president can do it with his own pen, it makes no sense. Legislation is not the way to go here when it's so easy for the president to sign it. And he actually continued and says that he won't answer if Democrats will work with Republicans to get legislation. He actually said he would rather keep the focus on Trump. If that's not speaking volumes, I don't know what is.
He's a lawmaker. He is a United States senator who's basically arguing the Senate and the Congress have no business addressing this issue. They are the only ones who should be addressing this issue. They should have been doing it over the first 2 years of the Trump administration. They should have done it for 8 years of Obama. They should have done it for 8 years of Bush and 8 years of Clinton. But they haven't done it. Right? Blows me away. You have the leader of the Senate for the Democrats saying that the legal constitutional way of making change here for something as important as federal immigration policy, we want nothing to do with it. If that isn't a reason to completely elect these idiots out of office, to start over, we need 100 Trumps in the Senate. Not necessarily because of his ideology or his tweeting thumb. We need 100 people who haven't spent the last 50 years of their lives not doing the job they were voted to do.
Continuing on this, it's not just our politicians who are claiming that Trump needs to do the work. Now, we have fake outrage by everyone. And of course, we have to have the celebrities involved. They immediately got involved, and the most, I guess, outrageous has been what Peter Fonda actually tweeted out. He said, we should rip Barron Trump from his mother's arms and put him in a cage with pedophiles and see if mother will stand up against the giant a-hole she is married to. 90 million people in the streets on the same weekend in the country. F. He also called in a later tweet for Sarah Sanders' kids to be kidnapped, and Melania actually notified Secret Service of this. I mean, Peter Henry Fonda, has absolutely lost his mind.
Yeah, throw that clip up again. Let me engage in a little close reading here. Let's read as an English professor.
Close
right?
reading time.
Let's close reading time. Something the mainstream media never does. Let's look at this tweet for a moment. We should rip Barron Trump from his mother's arms. Now, we've been told that Melania wants nothing to do with Donald Trump, that she doesn't live in the White House. So all right, we're already on sketchy ground for a liberal. It's not promising for the liberal narrative. Number one, we should rip Barron Trump from his mother's arms and put him in a cage with pedophiles. Now, isn't this the party, the radical Democrat left, that doesn't believe in pedophilia?
Correct.
Isn't this the party that sees words like pedophilia as a slur against adult people who are oriented to be sexually attracted to babies? Isn't that what we're putting in our first grades now, right? In these textbooks, pictures of adult naked people alongside baby naked people, and teaching this as some kind of progressive educational moment. Go back to that quote. I'm not done parsing this, right? So pedophilias, right? So pedophiles. He uses the word pedophiles, right? Right there, he's turned off a whole community, the whole NAMBLA community now on the left is going to have a problem with this. Look, it is a threat, isn't it? It's a threat to, in the words of Bad Santa, they basically accusing putting him in cages with pedophiliacs, if you remember Bad Santa. That's exactly what Peter Henry Fonda is calling for. And don't get me started on the Fonda pedigree, right?
All right, we're going to go on to the First Lady foolery.
First Lady foolery.
All 5 First Ladies who are currently living decided to chime in on the whole issue. And we kick off with Laura Bush, who actually put an op-ed in the Washington Post. She said, I live in a border state. I appreciate the need to enforce and protect our international boundaries, but this zero tolerance policy is cruel. It is immoral, and it breaks my heart. And of course, Michelle Obama...
Hang on. Before we go on to Michelle Obama, got to say a word about Laura Bush here. So you agree that we need to protect our borders. You agree to that, Laura Bush. You think that's important. And yet, the fact that we're not going to tolerate illegal border crossings is immoral. How do you square that circle, Laura Bush? And Laura Bush, of all the first ladies we're about to hear from, I know what Hillary Clinton's going to say, and I know what Michelle Obama's going to say, and I really don't care because they're liberal ideologues. But you, for 8 years, Laura Bush, we didn't hear a word from you. As Barack Obama's guns program, right, the Department of Justice funneling guns to Mexico, right, to try to infiltrate the cartels. Those guns that that Barack Obama sent to Mexico killed a lot of Mexican kids, Laura Bush, and we heard not a peep out of your patrician butt. Now, right, you feel empowered. Just admit it, Laura Bush. You are not now, nor were you ever a conservative or Republican. And you're part of the problem that turned George Bush into a squish after we elected him.
Okay, so all I was going to say about Michelle was the simple fact that she just retweeted Laura's comments and said, sometimes truth transcends party.
Isn't it amazing now that Michelle Obama, who had nothing nice to say about the Bushes, called them warmongers and all of that, now that Laura Bush has decided to show her true colors, they ought to do a tour together, right? Well, Ebony and Ivory, right? On the board, down on the border. Preach it.
But George and Michelle are actually, they're besties now.
Yes, they are.
So
yeah.
That.
And again, same thing with George Bush.
Yeah.
For 8 years, he said nothing about the Obama administration. Not a word. Not a word about the scandal, not a word about the dishonesty, not a word about the deception, the lying, not a word. And he's talked a lot since Donald Trump has become president. This is the problem. This is, my friends, the swamp.
All right.
This is the swamp.
Melania had released a statement early on, but so much has happened since she released a statement. She may be singing another tune, but she did say she hates to see children separated from their families and hopes both sides of the aisle can finally come together to achieve successful immigration reform. She believes we need to be a country that follows all laws, but also a country that governs with heart. And I think that's what we're trying to do. So.
Well, I love what she said about both sides of the aisle. This really shouldn't be a presidential decision, right?
No.
This really shouldn't be something that the President of the United States has to do by fiat. It should be a Democrat and a Republican thing. This should be a Congress, Senate, a piece of legislation. But we can't get it, right? And primarily it's because you've got cowardly Republicans who are afraid of being painted as racist. Republicans who should know better, by the way, who are afraid to do the right thing. We could have, look, if you fixed the immigration policy, if you created a fair but tough immigration policy that let us regulate who came to this country, which is the federal mandate. There are so few things at the federal level you're supposed to have your big sausage fingers into. So little you're allowed constitutionally to get involved with at the federal level. This is one of them. Do it, but they won't do it because Democrat politicians benefit from the more chaos on the border, the more brown-skinned people you can take pictures of in cages or crying or weeping, the more brown-skinned babies you can see in the arms of ICE agents, the better you think you're going to fundraise it on it. And for the Republicans, how many corporations need the cheap labor that you're going to underwrite here by an unwillingness to enforce federal law? Just do it. Do your jobs. Melania is the only one of those first ladies, the least political of all of them, by the way. She's the only one who points to the right solution.
But then we get Hillary, and as always, she opens her mouth and words come out and they're not good. So she gave a speech in New York on Monday, and she began to rattle off her credentials as a Christian by saying that I went to a lot of years of Sunday school. I even taught it from time to time. I've studied the Bible, both the Old and the New Testament. Because, that's what the Bible is made of. Okay, and she says, what is being done using the name of religion is contrary to everything I was ever taught. And here's the famous quoted verse from the Bible. Jesus said, suffer the little children unto me. He did not say, let the children suffer.
So wait a second. Hillary Clinton is the biggest proponent of driving God from every sphere of the public sector, right? Hillary Clinton wants no God. She doesn't want God in churches. She wants to get rich. She doesn't want the little sisters of the poor to be able to not provide abortion to their employees, okay? She wants God out of the public sphere. And so here, President Hillary would have welcomed Jesus into the White House because she didn't say separation of church and state. Right? What she said is Jesus would have suffered the little children to come unto him. And she's exactly right. But Jesus isn't in charge and never has been, according to the left libbies, of government, right? The hypocrisy of this rings staggeringly so. The entire message of Christ about children was an individual one, right? Christ is the same Jesus who said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, right? That good Christians, St. Paul, are obligated to follow the laws of the land. That includes you, Hillary, and the law of the land says that if you are coming to this country illegally and dragging children along with you, you're going to get arrested. And if you're going, no one gets who else in this country commits any crime? What American citizen commits a serious crime and then gets to take their kids to jail with them? You're a mom, you're a single mom who knocks off a bank with your kids in the back seat wearing ski masks. You get arrested by the police. You don't get to take your kids with you to prison. They get put in a foster home. Something happens to them. Why is it when you storm the border illegally, knowing the risk that you're taking, exposing those kids? What city government, What child protective services in any county in this nation, if you told them about a mom who is force marching her kids through a desert with insufficient food and water, what child protective service agency wouldn't immediately confiscate those kids from that parent? But when it happens at the border, not only must we immediately protect those kids at all costs, and I agree they should be fed and housed and all of that, but then make sure they're with their parents. Because if you do that, if you link the children to the parents inseparably, then you really can't persecute, and you certainly can't prosecute the parents either. They have to come in too. And that's the broader picture for progressives here. Those kids are going to be better cared for than clearly their parents were taking care of them. No one argues that this is a permanent thing. The kids will go back with the parents once you figure out how you're going to get the parents back to their own countries. But that's not how this system works. This is a whole lot of angst, a whole lot of aggravation, a whole lot of crocodile tears for a situation that is not of the federal government's making. It is borne by these immigrants who are storming the borders. But the bigger responsibility, again, lies with the Congress that refuses to fix a broken immigration policy.
The point I want to make and that no one is making is we're looking at the kids at the border, the kids coming from Mexico. How about the kids who we already have here who are American citizens? Because the University of Chicago just in the most recent report that the study they did found that we have 700,000 children, adolescents who are homeless. That's about 1 in 30 adolescents. And we have more than 3.5 million young adults. So they get out of the foster care system at 18 to 25. They have no resources, so we have 3.5 million of them who are homeless. We can't look at our own children here, but we can put all our resources and do our crocodile tears for all these other children. It's just when you pick one to be political, it's clear that it's being political because you're not looking at your own children here.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And people have been pointing this out about this immigration issue for a long time. And one of the reasons Trump became President Trump is because let's make America great again. Before we fix the rest of the world's problems, before we preen and posture about how well we're treating immigrant children, how about we treat our own children well? I promise you, if we get to the point as a civilization that every American is treated in the best possible way, which means the least possible federal intervention necessary, the more individuality, the more individual rights, the more local communities and local families have say over what happens to their kids, the better off we're going to be. This argument that it's the federal government's job now to be the big daddy mama welfare state, not just for American kids, who they are failing, but to international kids as well, it's a situation that's designed to collapse the country, to collapse its infrastructure, to collapse its wealth, to collapse its liberties, all in the name of what? And I'll go one step further. I asked this many times. What about the countries from which these kids come from? I mean, is it not a crime in their countries to expose these kids to that kind of potential danger along the way, to dangerous coyotes shuttling them back and forth, to the terrors of the desert and starvation and thirst, to predators, rapists? How much child sex trafficking is taking place on the border with these kids? And the only response from the American left and the squishy rhinos on the right, including the Bushes, is this is immoral? The whole damn thing is immoral. The whole thing is immoral. You can't fix that. What you can fix is our immigration laws, but you won't do it. Third time I said it.
It is. And the final time you're going to say it.
Hopefully.
Because we are going to move on.
God.
Over the weekend it was Father's Day, and so we found some great Father's Day stories out there. And by great, I mean awful. So CNN kicked off the weekend, even before Father's Day happened, with a feature story. And the headline is actually 3 sentences. It says, he gave birth, he breastfed, now he wants his son to see him as a man. So Sebastian Sparks is a woman who transitioned into a man, and so he was female, and he's married to Angel, who is her wife, husband. Basically, they switched genders, and this is what CNN is running with, and it's Father's Day.
I mean, you explained that about as best as you could, and I have no idea what the hell you just said to me in terms of pronouns.
So it was a man and a woman had a kid, and now they each identify as the opposite gender, and they're raising their son.
The final quote for me is the end of that. And yet he, she, whatever it was, she started as a woman.
Started as a man, is now a woman, but then the husband started as a man and is a woman now. They switched.
Who gave birth to the child?
The one in the picture.
the one
who is now a man but was a woman. Well, is a woman.
So that right there
identifies as a man.
Was born a woman.
Yep.
And now she claims to be a man.
Yep.
And she actually gave birth live to that baby.
Yep.
Right. And so now he wants that baby when it grows up to view her as a man. Is
Yes.
that pretty much it?
Yep.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. No further comment required. If you cannot see the absurdity of that, if you think that's romantic and wonderful, if you think hijacking friggin' Father's Day with that kind of propaganda is what's really wholesome and healthy for America moving forward, then turn out of the show right now. Just go away. Just do something else.
We have more propaganda because NBC decided to also put a story out, and their headline, because these people don't know how to write headlines, says, "This Father's Day, men are experiencing a crisis of masculinity. The solution? More feminism."
So, feminism spends about 30 years teaching little boys that they're dangerous, teaching men and young men in schools and colleges that they're responsible for all the world's evil, coming up with sexist terms and absolutely stereotypical terms like patriarchy to make men feel bad. And the answer the feminists say is more feminine. We need a little bit more cowbell, right? This is like the Nazis standing in Berlin in 1945, surveying the rubble. You know what we need? You know what we need, Adolf? A little more Nazism. You know what we need? A little bit more Nazism.
A little bit.
That's exactly right. Stupid, but feminism. At some point in the history of linguistics, the words stupid and feminist are going to intersect. Intersectionality. The new intersectionality, right?
All right, we're going to go to some positive stories because I actually like positivity in my life. Dream man Chris Pratt, who just came out on the MTV Awards, he got a Next Generation or a Generation Award, and his acceptance speech was unique. He said he had 9 Chris Pratt rules, and some of them are quite funny, but some of them are amazing too. So one of them includes, it doesn't matter what it is, earn it. A good deed. Reach out to someone in pain. Be of service. It feels good, and it's good for your soul. He had originally said, we have a soul, so you should use it. He also said, and this is the main one, God is real. God loves you. God wants the best for you. Believe that. I do. He also, the very next one was to give advice on if you have to, use the bathroom at a party, how to go through that experience. And then I liked how he ended with, nobody is perfect. People will tell you that you are perfect just the way you are. You are not. You are imperfect. You always will be, but there is a powerful force that designed you that way. And if you're willing to accept that, you will have grace. And grace is a gift. Like the freedom that we enjoy in this country, that grace was paid for with somebody else's blood. Do not forget that. Don't take that for granted.
Beautiful. And congratulations to Chris Pratt for doing it, for standing up there. Because we have reached the point where the only possible way to rebel, the only possible way in Hollywood or the media or academia or school to be a rebel is to adhere to traditional Christian values. It's the only left bastion, right? The bastion left to us in which we can rebel against these radically conformist progressive ideals that are beginning to sweep all of the higher cultural aspects of our nation. So congratulations to you for doing that. I'm really more than a little bit sure that it's not going to cost you. You're a good actor. You take good roles. People want to come and see your movies, something that Brooke Baldwin from last week doesn't understand, right? We should pay female actresses and athletes the same. No, you get paid a lot, Chris, because people want to see you. And I think you're going to make more people want to see you with those values. It's no wonder that people of faith, people who really do, and the humility that comes with having faith, the recognition that there is something bigger than you and your stupid politics, or from the feminist perspective, there's something bigger than you and your stupid ovaries, right? There is something bigger than us. It breeds humility. It also breeds a sense of humor, something we haven't seen on the left much lately.
Nah, they don't have much humor at all. A couple weeks ago, we had a negative story about Pope Francis, but this week we have something positive. He actually came out and said that abortion is like Nazi eugenics. He was actually at, an Italian Family Association. His quote is, children should be welcomed the way they come, the way God sends them to us, the way God allows, even if sometimes they are ill. I've heard that it's fashionable, or at least habitual, to perform certain exams in the early months of pregnancy to see if the baby is unwell or comes with a certain problem. And to have an easy life, one does away with an innocent. The world was scandalized by what the Nazis did to ensure the purity of the race. Today we do the same thing, but with white gloves.
And I love the white gloves analogy. Basically what he's saying, he's making a point. Yeah. You could even take it one step further, I think, than the Pope did. You could point out that at shreds for no other reason and for no greater good than simply the comfort, the immediate comfort of the mother. That's unacceptable.
Well, famed atheist Richard Dawkins just was livid at what the Pope said, and it was right to the heart of your point. He was triggered, so he said that on his Twitter account, he said, and you thought Francis was the good pope. Abortion to avoid birth defects is not about eugenics. It's about the avoidance of individual human suffering.
Right. So, in other words, according to Richard Dawkins, it is necessary to abort babies if the potential for suffering exists. By that argument, you abort every baby before it's born and you eliminate the species. Because I got news for you, Dick Dawkins. Every single baby born, even the healthiest, even the most European with that great wavy gray hair that I'm so envious of, right? Even the great scientist Richard Dawkins is gonna suffer. God knows you make me suffer every time you open your mouth. By that argument, you just extinguish the species altogether. And it's amazing to me how many libs are eugenicists? How many libs are signing how many young lib women are signing manifestos that they will never reproduce to destroy the planet further, right? How many, we had an article about a psychologist just last week about how many women are not having babies because Donald Trump is president. This kind of stuff is eugenics, right? The only way to guarantee that people don't suffer is to not let them be born. And if you can make that argument about potentially Down syndrome babies, then you can make it about healthy babies too. In a world where global warming alarmism is the new religion of the left, to satisfy the dictates of that religion, every baby born is going to make Mother Earth suffer. So just stop having them all together. And people like Dawkins would be very comfortable with this. Although I'm pretty sure if he had to choose between his own life and not having his life, he would consider himself way too important to have been aborted. Maybe Dawkins could be the only one left on the planet.
Well, we've had a lot of candidates for Dunce of the Day, but none of them have even been talked about yet.
Our new feature, Dunce of the Day. And remember last week in our inaugural Dunce of the Day, we crowned Mindy Kaling of Office fame for her stupid comments at Dartmouth University during a commencement speech. And what do you have today?
And guess what, Mindy Kaling? You're a candidate again.
Kelly Kapoor returns.
Kelly always returns. This time, she came out because she's in Ocean's 8, which is basically they rebooted the Ocean series or whatnot, and it's all women this time, kind of like they did with Ghostbusters. We'll see how it turns out. But Mindy Kaling came out and said that it was so unfair that so many movie critics are white men. Her quote is, "I think white men would enjoy this movie and would enjoy my work, but often I think there is a certain kind of critic that will damn it in a way because they don't understand it, because they come at it at a different point of view, and they're so powerful." Rotten Tomatoes.
So what's happened is, yet again, feminist filmmakers have decided that they have nothing new to say. This tells you everything you need to know. If women are so superior and so woke, and the world so needs to hear from non-men, isn't it amazing how all these woke, liberated, Ivy League educated Hollywood female directors can't find anything new to say? They're going back and they're remaking all these men's movies, emptying out the men, like Ghostbusters. We had the same problem with Ghostbusters, right? Ghostbusters, the woman version, was a complete failure. And what did they say caused that? Men. It was men's fault. We were too sexist to go see these girls cavorting around with ghosts. No, that's not it. You made the movie. I don't care who you put in the role. You're not going to replace Bill Murray. This would be like Hollywood men. If Hollywood men were as utterly insecure and clueless as Hollywood women, they would start immediately making remakes of Thelma and Louise, and they'd cast Robert De Niro and Danny DeVito as the Thelma and Louise roles. And can you imagine that, right? The two of them skating across the country, avoiding the matriarchy. Of course, you wouldn't watch it. Nobody would watch it. And think about this, Hollywood, on those rare moments when you actually do put talented women in movies of your own making that are geared to the women, they work. How about Bridesmaids? Everybody loved Bridesmaids. All the men I know who hate weddings and hate bachelorette parties and hate that many women in any small space. They loved the movie. And why did they love it? Because it was true to the female reality.
We have 4 more candidates to get through.
We only covered 1. 4 more for Dunce of the Day.
The next one is Brooke Baldwin, who is a CNN correspondent, and she opined that male professional athletes make more money than female professional athletes. So in her rant when she was on CNN, she rhetorically asked her audience, what do Serena Williams, Danica Patrick, Lindsey Vonn, Ronda Rousey, and Maria Sharapova all have in common?
Before you answer, can I say it? They are all far, far, far more athletic and wealthy than me.
I agree.
Well, I'm pretty sure that's not what Brooke was going for.
No, it was not.
What did Brooke say about that?
Well, they're all badass women, not on the list of the 100 highest paid athletes in the world.
Right. So they're all filthy rich. In
Yes.
fact, Danica Patrick is an exemplar example of this here. She is a classic case of this. Danica Patrick, if she were a male driver with her record, no one would even know her name.
Correct.
In fact, I would bet you, out in the audience, if I put up a picture of Danica Patrick right now, I'll bet you 50% of you could identify who that was. Because she's been in commercials, she's done bikini shoots, right? Yep. For a woman as unaccomplished as Danica, she never won a single race on a major event. The average NASCAR driver who doesn't win a race, nobody knows him, but you do know who Danica is. And that should tell you something. Danica Patrick made millions of dollars performing less than adequately at a sport dominated by men. It's her gender that made her that money, not her race performance.
Okay, 3 more candidates. Next is Alyssa Milano, who just will not shush herself. She's been lighting up Twitter lately with all of her social justice warrior comments, and she actually floated a kind of a new conspiracy theory about the NRA. She tweeted out, well, what do we have here? And it's in relation to the NRA had given a Courage Award out to, I don't know how to pronounce, Ajit Pai, who's responsible for repealing net neutrality. We're not all quite sure what Alyssa was trying to do, but more importantly, recently she's been saying a bunch of other things, such as the 14th Amendment doesn't apply to women because it was in the Constitution before women had the right to vote. And she also put up a list of things that were popular in 1791, which is the year the Second Amendment came out. Some of those things include smallpox, typhus, lead paint, slavery. So this is what Alyssa Milano's been doing with her time lately.
This is the vacuous lib chick who's named after a Pepperidge Farm cookie. This is who we're talking about?
Yes.
You know, she has such a long history of making stupid comments that I just can't take her seriously. She's like Ashley Judge, slightly slower sister. Not worth our time.
All right. Next is Bono.
Oh,
so Bono, frontman for U2, he just got done coming out and saying, hey, we should have legalized abortion in Ireland. And now, because of immigration, he was on stage in D.C. and he said, for those who would use the Holy Scripture to justify tearing children from the arms of their mother, we put the record straight. And you'll never guess which Bible verse he's quoting.
Which one?
Matthew 19:14. Suffer the little children.
You know when little kids, Bono, U2, right? One love, right? Bono. The guy who's trying to get contraception and AIDS treatments in Africa. A guy who actually praised George Bush for having some good ideas until he got screamed at by the left and kind of backed off it. Bono. Children suffer when you tear them to pieces in the mother's womb. You just went on record endorsing the nation of Ireland, one of the few nominally Catholic countries left in the world, to jettison their anti-abortion laws so babies can be slaughtered in the womb. Do you think Jesus would have said, suffer the babies to undergo third trimester decapitation? Do you think they'd been okay with that? I get it. You're a liberal. You want to see liberals taken care of. You want to see liberals as the heroes in everything, right? Welcoming thousands and thousands of immigrant babies across borders. That's fine. But when you say suffer the children, when you start quoting scripture in defense of children, just think about what sandy ground your house is built on when it comes to protecting the rights and the lives of children.
Okay, and our final contestant this week is none other than Kathy Griffin. First, she started out last week by calling Kevin Hart a naughty word. She called him out for not attacking Donald Trump with his comedy. And she said, I personally think that a bleep move because he's a black man, but I guess he's selling more tickets than I ever will. Well, yeah, Kathy, yeah. And then she went on to attack Melania Trump with obviously with immigration stuff and said, F you, Melanie, and that's in reference to Donald Trump accidentally saying Melanie a while back, and it says, you know damn well your husband can end this immediately, you feckless, complicit piece of S-word.
All I can say about Kathy Griffin, and we've had her on the show many times, is she reminds me of Benjamin Button, Howdy Doody. I mean, think about the puppet Howdy Doody. If he had the Benjamin Button disease, right? And you think about that elongated face. That's what I think of when I think of Kathy Griffin. The other thing I think of when I think of Kathy Griffin is shockingly, staggeringly unfunny. So I'm going to go with, and I don't think this is going to surprise you, in the interest of being terribly feminist, I will not blame any of the women for their stupid comments. I will blame them, but I will not make them dunce of the week. That goes to our Irish rocker friend in arguing that suffer the children only means letting them cross the border. It doesn't mean letting them actually be born. You know how that goes. So I'm going with Bono. Who do you pick? Who is look at that.
I picked Paul Hewson, the one and only Bono. Paul Hewson.
Oh my God, does Bono got old guy's chin?
Yeah,
what the hell happened?
He's got some things going on
Good
there.
Lord, I mean, they do have plastic surgery. They're killing babies in Ireland now. They do have plastic surgery. They can fix that, can't they?
Well, they wouldn't do it accurately.
Anyway.
Rip it apart. All right, so if you liked what you just saw here, make sure that you give us a like on Facebook. Go over to iTunes or SoundCloud. Give us a nice review there. And we are looking for people to either ask us questions via email at askduke@fpeusa.org, or maybe just comment on the bottom of this video. Let us know who you think the dunce of the day should be. And we actually have a brand new segment. We had Dr. Duke sit down with Charlie Kirk, who's the founder of Turning Point USA, and that's coming up next.
Time now for our new weekly segment, Talking Points, with Charlie Kirk, founder of Turning Point USA. Charlie, with all the massive problems that stem from illegal immigration, the huge cost to state governments, the spread of diseases, gang violence, and drugs, the American left instead chooses to focus all their bile on attacking President Trump on behalf of children separated from parents along the southern border. What are your thoughts about media bias surrounding this immigration issue?
It's unbelievable. If you look at the statistics, under Obama, there were over 90,000 kids that were detained. I don't remember the Democrats going down to the border or protesting that when it happened. But look, this is only an issue because people in both political parties have refused to build the wall, have refused to strengthen the border, and have refused to cut off the incentives that are making people from Central America and from Mexico send unaccompanied minors to the border to come to America in the first place illegally. And so if you don't shut off the incentives, what are the incentives? The government welfare benefits, the driver's licenses for illegal aliens. So President Trump is determined to solve the issue, not further demagogue it, but the Democrats would rather demagogue it because they know that it can create a wedge and potentially be a political winner. But they'd much rather do that than actually come to some form of a solution so that this would no longer be a problem in the future.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you think about how the liberal media is much more interested in the sensationalism of this story. So much so that they actually took pictures of immigrant children in cages that took place during the Obama administration and let the American people think that this was under Trump. Here's the thing for me that bothers me, and I want your thoughts on this. We keep forgetting in these immigration debates that to enter this country illegally is a felony crime. Can you think of any other felony crime in this country, Charlie, where if a mom or a dad engaged in a felonious crime, they would not have their kids taken from them. They would have their kids taken from them and put in boarding centers, just like these immigrant kids are. What's the difference between those things?
There is no difference. And so the left tries to say, oh, they're seeking asylum. Well, there's a process for that. You have to go to a port of entry, not just cross the border anywhere you want, whenever you want to do it. And so that argument falls apart instantaneously. So look, illegal immigration and the lack of enforcing our laws has created this perpetual political crisis where you have foreign nationals within the United States. And I'm tired of calling them illegal immigrants. We should call them what they are. They are foreign nationals. They're citizens of another country. Therefore, they're not the constitutional rights and the capacity for them to declare themselves as citizenships or legally domiciled in the country does not pertain to them. And so I find it very hard to strike a balance to say, oh, we should just defer the rule of law to felons, to 14 to 20 million people. So you're spot on here. Your analysis is exactly right. We have to be a nation of laws and of borders, and a primary component of a nation state is a strong border, is a definitive line of where those laws begin and where they end. And we are not Mexico, and we are not Canada, and that's why borders matter.
Well, the hypocrisy, I think, is even greater than that. I mean, we keep hearing about how these kids, these families that are coming to our border are broke, they're starving to death, they're sometimes on the verge of heat collapse, they're carrying diseases with them that they need to be treated for. So what is the American government doing? They are taking these kids at the border, kids who their own parents can't look after. They can't feed these kids, they can't provide vaccines for these kids, they can't provide shelter for these kids. The American government is taking these kids and providing those things for those children. And yet to the American media, better let these kids pass out and die on the border so you can blame Trump than give Trump credit for actually trying to look after the needs of these immigrant kids.
Right. Trump's trying to solve the problem, but let's go through the numbers of illegal immigration and the harm that it is causing in America. An illegal immigrant is twice as likely to commit a crime versus a natural-born citizen, according to the Arizona Department of Corrections. Illegal immigration costs the U.S. taxpayer over $130 billion a year, and they're worrying about a couple $1 billion for a wall, really? So we have 56,000 illegal immigrants in federal prison. 56,000. Do you know the statute to get into federal prison? You have to do something really, really bad to get into federal prison, like drug trafficking or sex trafficking. Speaking of sex trafficking, 12,000 children are illegally sex trafficked across the southern border every single year. These are kids. I mean, this is not, anything to joke about. 12,000 kids are sex trafficked a year across the southern border. Horrible. Guns. Millions of illegal guns come across the southern border. The left wants gun control. Well, border control would ensure gun control. The flow of illegal guns in this country. 98% of the heroin and fentanyl in this country that are being used in middle America come across the southern border. So those people that care about the opioid epidemic, which everyone should care about, it involves illegal immigration. Those are just some of the statistics around the problem with the illegal immigration, but this could be solved with a militarized border and something that would define our sovereignty as a nation state instead of just this open border, loose policy that continues to deteriorate the socioeconomic and cultural fabric of America.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And Donald Trump has, from the beginning of his presidency, even 3 years ago when he began as a candidate, he made it absolutely clear that before you can have any meaningful abating of the suffering that goes along our southern border, you have to employ the Congress and the Senate to reform immigration policy. We know back from the 1980s when Ronald Reagan passed amnesty and Teddy Kennedy promised us, well, after you pass amnesty, then we'll reform immigration law. We did the amnesty and nothing was reformed.
And it was Reagan's biggest regret.
Exactly. Exactly. And to back up your point about how Donald Trump is proactively trying to fix this and the Senate and the Congress won't, here's a quote just today from Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat leader in the Senate. He says he would rather, quote, keep the focus of this tragedy on Trump than support a bill that will ease illegal immigrant families and keep them united at the border. He would rather Donald Trump suffer politically than to actually help those kids. This is the leader of the Democrat Senate.
You have it right there. And so the Democrats would rather demagogue a political issue into oblivion than actually come to some form of consensus and agreement to solve that political issue. And so you're spot on here, and I think more than anything else, this will be a defining issue, whether Republicans and Trump do what they said they are going to do in defiance of the DC elite and the liberal media, or are they going to kowtow to the open border policies of some members in the Republican Party and the liberal Democrats? And so we should have compassion for all people, but I also have compassion for the families that have lost children at the hands and crimes of illegal immigrants. Also have compassion for the deterioration of the rule of law and the destruction of our culture. And so I'm very troubled and worried that a bad immigration deal is going to be struck here, just to try to kowtow to the Washington Post and the cable news networks. But it makes sense if you actually think about it. Trump is solving the Korean War. Tax cut is working unbelievable. We have more jobs than people are searching for them. Food stamp enrollments are going down. ISIS is on the run. Stock market at all-time high. Economic confidence has never been higher. People feel great about the country. If I was a Democrat, I'd be freaking out trying to find a political issue like this. Are you kidding me? It makes sense, but it doesn't make sense for the country, and that's the most troubling part.
Yeah, and the Democrats have thrown everything they possibly could at Donald Trump, including this immigration thing, the Stormy Daniels debacle that blew up in their face. They're clearly putting politics above what's good for the country, but they've been doing that for quite a while. You brought up something about kids. It's absolutely right. We should be absolutely compassionate about kids and the suffering plight of kids. But you also mentioned that we want to be sympathetic to the plight of suffering American children, too.
Yeah.
You think about what's going on in this country, how the left uses these kids almost as rhetorical human shields, right? They don't really care about those kids. You think about in this country a couple months ago, we had a child that was actually taken away from his parents because the parents would not agree to let this underage kid transition to the opposite gender. And so we have American kids being separated from their parents all the time. What about what's going on with the crisis of American kids, too, that the Democrat Party is enabling in every way?
Correct. And if they actually cared about these kids, again, they would have been protesting and demagoguing during the Obama presidency. Because, look, here's the cool thing about at least our faction of the Republican Party is that our critiques and our focus are consistent despite who is in political office. So we've been arguing for strong borders during Obama, and now we're arguing for strong borders under Trump. Democrats argue for separation of children policy and family deferment now, but they didn't under Obama, which really blows apart their entire argument. I mean, it shows that this is a political issue for them, not an issue of principle, two totally different things. But you bring up a great point that, look, there's an argument that the Democrats care much more about the feelings of foreign nationals and illegal immigrants than the well-being of the American people. And I think that's going to be a defining political issue for many years to come.
I think you're absolutely right. And one question I've always wanted to talk about immigration here is, why is the focus always on America, who is receiving immigrants? We're not sending immigrants to Central and South America. We are not emptying our nations, our poor nation, our sick nation, our criminal nation down to the southern border. They are doing it here. How come there's never a discussion? How many of these immigrants you pointed out that come from Central and South America, how many of them walk hungry, walk without medical care or shelter, all the way through the country of Mexico, right? And there's never a single call for the Mexican government to engage in the kind of humane immigration policies that we actually have. How this kind of hypocrisy is lost on the media always angers me as well.
If all the citizens of Mexico and Central America were always going to be net benefits, they would prevent them from leaving the country. They would have a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border preventing them from entering the United States. Instead, we're the ones that have to patrol the border. In fact, it's in some ways, it eases the burden of the Mexican government, which should really make us think for a second, wait a second, why are we doing this again? Why are we having this sort of conversation? So I think that a strong border will solve a lot of these issues. But look, the Democrats want open borders. They don't believe in borders. They don't believe in the national sovereignty of the United States.
Well, unless it's the borders around their gated mansions right, exactly. Well, I know you have a fantastic relationship with President Trump. I know he listens to you carefully, and you have great respect for the man. You know him. Talk a little bit to our audience about they're trying to paint Donald Trump in the media as this ogre who hates children. You know better. Talk a little bit about your conversations with Donald Trump with regards to issues like this.
He has great compassion for all people. He has a wonderful heart. He really, really does, and I've seen it firsthand. With that being said, he also understands that he's put in a position, he has an obligation to put this country first and our citizens first. He is not ruler of the world. He's not czar of the Central American people. He's not. He has a pure directive by statute of the U.S. Constitution to put the citizens of the American people first. The objectives and the obligations of the American people first. That's very admirable, that he actually is honoring that he's not trying to be head of the UN, or he's not trying to be in charge of all these other different humanitarian crises. So he has a great heart. He's going to do the best thing for the most amount of people, but he's also going to honor our laws and protect our borders and solve these structural crises. So it's not going to be a perpetual issue for many years to come.
And I think when this is all said and done, but certainly before we get to the next major election, I think by that time we're going to see that Donald Trump has taken another Obama-era problem. Kids on the border pent up in cages like chickens. Yes. He's going to take that problem that the media wasn't concerned about. He's going to fix it. And it's going to be one more way Trump is going to be able to brag. The media may not cover it, but brag justly that he has begun a reformation process in this country that's pretty unparalleled.
And you look at all that he's solved. He withdrew us from the horrible TPP deal, withdrew us from the Iran deal, withdrew us from the Paris Climate Accord. He moved the embassy to Jerusalem. He's deregulated the economy amazingly. He's brought back the American coal industry. He's made us energy independent, economic confidence all-time high, largest middle-class tax cut, opened up ANWR in Alaska, repealed the individual mandate, the Right to Try Act, the VA Accountability Act, the VA Choice Act. Whoa, that would be great for 8 years. He's done it in 500 days. And so he's solving problems, advancing solutions. He will be the greatest president of our lifetime and possibly the greatest president in American history.
Charlie Kirk, founder of Turning Point USA. It's been a great pleasure talking with you today. I look forward to us being together again next week.
Me too.
And be sure to look for a new interview with Charlie every week at this hour. And that does it for us this week. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke, and we'll see you next time.